I'm Dr. Mahua Bhattacharjee. So we will be doing pricing of factors of production. So to continue, we have a simple production function we have taken. X is equal to function of labor production factor production function, in which output is a function of labor, and a cost function we have taken. X is equal to WL plus F. F is the fixed cost of production and WL is the labor unit which has been used into the wages which has been paid. And if it is profit is equal to R minus C, this is something, and R we know that it is R is equal to PX, and C if we take that WL plus F, and then function of PX FL minus WL plus F, and the profit function to maximize the first derivative, we find out that PX is equal PX dx dl minus W is equal to fixed cost, no differentiation because it is a fixed factors of production, equals to 0, and so Px and dx by dl is marginal physical product of the labor, which is equals to W, and with this equation we find that Px into MPPL is equal to VMPL and VMPL is equal to W. So here we find out that in product market the wage of a factor is nothing but the value of the marginal productivity, value of the marginal productivity of the factor which is used, and the value of the marginal productivity is nothing but the marginal physical productivity of the labor into the price of the commodity which it has been produced by the factor. So this is something which we have, we are trying to derive the demand function of the factor market, which has been represented by the VMPL of the, which has been determined by the VMPL of the VMPL curve. Now the VMPL curve is something which has been representing the demand curve. But now we know that in the price determination we need both the demand and the supply curve. So if the supply curve in a perfectly competitive market we consider to be horizontal straight line, and then the VMPL curve is sloping downward, and so then the intersection of the supply curve and the VMPL curve will determining the equilibrium level of employment of the fixed wage rate. So this is something which we get to know, but the supply curve is something which will not be always a horizontal straight line. So what are the factors which determines the supply of a factor? What are the factors which determines the supply of the factors of production? So this is something which is the main determinants of the supply of the labor. It is obviously the price of the labor which is been paid, and then the taste of the consumer of that product, and then the size of the population, the labor force participation rate, the educational and the geographical distribution. These all factors will determine actually the total supply of the factor. But there is an exception in the supply curve of a factor. It is nothing that if the wage goes on increasing, the supply curve of the factor also will go on rising. That is, the factor employment not necessarily always will go on increasing with the wage increase, because there is a point that a worker can work for the limit is 24 hours, but the point is that 24 hours no worker will be ready to work, because to survive he needs to take rest, which is called leisure. But in initial stage, if we consider that the work of with the wages been paid higher and higher, we will find that the laborers are ready to give more labor, and it is going in proportion to the wages. That is, if it is getting double labor, he is ready to give double of his labor. But at one time, it will be something that in which he will be ready to substitute his leisure for work, because it is something that he has reached the cutoff or the minimum or the maximum wages which is required for him to sustain. He has got it, and beyond this, even if the wages increased, then the labor doesn't increase. So that's why we get a backward bending supply curve in the case of the backward bending wage curves in the case of the factor market, especially in the labor case, because it is not necessarily all the time it will be going positively with the increase in the wages, because this is mostly applicable to those suppose the young students who are going for the internship, and they are ready to work extra times, but after some time they know that they do not need that extra money, so they are not ready to work for that extra money to be paid. So in that case, their supply curve is not going proportionately with the increase in the wage rate. It is going backward. they are reducing their work and they are substituting their work with the leisure. They are going for the rest rather than to go for the work. So this is something which we have to take which we have to remember for the supply curve of labor. Now in the next case, what we want to know is that, so if the VMPL curve is sloping downward and the supply curve till it goes backward is intersecting each other, we get a perfectly competitive labor market equilibrium wage. But the question is this, as it is to be understood that in a factor market, it is not the factor alone determines the wages, or that doesn't alone represent the prices of the factor, because the factor market is a derived demand market, and so it interacts in the product market. So we have to take into consideration the factors which are being used in the product market. If the product market is in perfectly competitive, in which the labor market is also perfectly competitive, then we will be obviously getting a perfectly competitive labor market and product market, and which the VMPL and MPPL will be coinciding. But in all the case, we will not be the supply curve of the labor will be also horizontal straight line. So but in all the time we will not get it. So we will be interacting it with the imperfection. Sometime it will be monopsony, sometime it will be monopoly, which we will be discussing in detail when we go to the next topic.